Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have good, bad. Actually, no, we don't even have a bad today. We have good and crazy martinis for conservatives today, although if the last one actually comes true, it could end up being a bad martini a little bit later down the line. We also want to let you know of a couple of interesting updates on the Three Martini Lunch. First of all, if you do like us, head over to iTunes and give us a nice review. That definitely helps us. And also, if you have made the decision to purchase an NSA surveillance device, you can now listen to us on those. Alexa or Google Home, all you have to do is say, Alexa or Google, play the Three Martini Lunch podcast. And if your laptop is right next to your Alexa, you're now listening to us in stereo. So you're welcome.
I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. The pod bay doors must remain closed.
Yes, that's wonderful. I myself had thought about marketing one of those devices myself. I actually got a giant government grant, and we were going to call it, the name of the product was going to be spelled ENESAY. And then you would just say, NSA, schedule my doctor's appointment. And it would say things like,
Uploading your medical records to the central database.
and things like that. But apparently some people were worried about it. So
Anyway, enjoy it. If you've already got it, the government knows everything about you anyway, so you might as well enjoy the Three Martini Lunch on it.
he's dead, so you might as well enjoy the convenience.
That's right. All right. While your privacy is now in the dumper, the political future of Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, might be there as well. That's good martini number one. This is courtesy of Politico with some analysis from Jazz Shaw over at Hot Air. All bets are now off about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's political survival. An ethics scandal has plunged Canada's government into disarray, with the Prime Minister himself facing unprecedented political peril. A flood of new details allege Trudeau and several senior government officials repeatedly pressured his former Attorney General to drop corruption charges against a large construction company and reach a settlement agreement. Trudeau's political opponents sent police a letter Thursday requesting an investigation and called for Trudeau's resignation. Conservative Andrew Scheer, who hopes to replace Trudeau, says he can no longer, and in good standing with a clear conscience, lead this nation. Over to Jazz Shaw now. When the allegation of interfering with the Attorney General's office first emerged, Trudeau's team flatly denied there had been any such involvement. But this week, the former Attorney General in question, Jody Wilson-Raybould, provided testimony and notes from meetings and phone calls detailing the conversations she'd had with the Prime Minister's staff and even Trudeau himself. Compounding matters is the fact that the company, SNC-Lavalin, is a major employer in Quebec where Trudeau is a member of Parliament. The AG testified that Trudeau himself had reminded her that there was an election coming up in Quebec and this would look very bad. Wilson-Raybould was then demoted by the Prime Minister and replaced by a new official from Trudeau's home province. So, Jim, it's always a good day when government corruption gets exposed and under the sunshine of transparency. We don't know what will happen to Trudeau here, but the bloom might be off the rose.
Yeah, I mean, look, lest anyone say, oh, look at that, Jim and Greg are just rooting against Justin Trudeau and cheering for his downfall just because they don't like him. Au contraire, I say, for all of our Quebecois listeners out there. Now, look, admittedly, there are a couple of reasons why, ever since Justin Trudeau has appeared on the scene, there's been that, something stuck in my craw, and it's not just poutine. It's that sense that, when your father was head of state, I do recall George W. Bush, this argument of spoiled daddy's boy, wouldn't be anywhere without his father, all that kind of stuff. We've heard about George W. Bush. Here are kind of similar arguments about Trump and his father and all that kind of stuff. But, Justin Trudeau seems to get a pass over the fact that his father was prime minister a generation ago. And I've very rarely heard the argument through Trudeau as any type of an elitist or child of privilege or anything like that. They just kind of hand wave it, that away. If you have the right kind of views, he's that perfect dweeb punk, photogenic, but he still has all the right points of view, and people say he's smart. I'm not sure I always have thought what he said has been smart. He's the self-proclaimed feminist who has the occasional claims of sexual harassment or mistreatment of women. But I think, look, it's also probably fair to say that Justin Trudeau, he's one of those world leaders who embodies that Davos class. He's that guy who's against big business, except for the ones that are donating to his party because those ones are okay. And this would appear to be that kind of an example where, look, we don't intervene on behalf of big businesses because big businesses we're as leftists, as progressives, we're naturally skeptical of them unless they're our friends, and then they're okay. And so I think that's what this, the idea of what might be kind of delicious if this pans out and if these allegations do seem to be true. It all seems very plausible because we know this is the sort of thing that a lot of people, not just in Canada, but in the United States and around the world, this is why people in big business want to have friends in high places. They want to have elected leaders. This is why they make all those big donations. So again, it's not proven yet. We'll see whether this actually leads to his forced resignation or something like that. But look, this is a very familiar story in a lot of countries, and I'm not quite sure why Justin Trudeau would be offered the benefit of the doubt that we might not give to other ones. It just feels like a guy who's been, living a charmed life in Canadian politics. Reality might be catching up to him really fast.
Jim, I don't know if you remember this. We think we talked about it once or twice where when there was an election, a race for the Conservative Party leadership, and Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank was running for it. He didn't ultimately win it. But if he had, he'd potentially be in a position to rise to prime minister if this scandal were to reach an epic point, which would then leave two of the three North American heads of state being reality show stars.
Come on, Mexico! There's somebody down there who's got to be an option. Somebody who hosted Super Blablazo or something like that.
All right, let's talk about our second good martini. Man, it's nice to actually have not only one but two good martinis today. The Democrats are fighting with each other. This is because some Democrats who consider themselves moderates, but probably just more than anything want to get reelected, have been siding with Republicans on motions to recommit on the House floor. Usually after a bill passes, there's a motion to recommit, and normally it doesn't go anywhere because the majority like the bill that just passed. But a couple times now, a couple dozen Democrats have sided with Republicans, and things have actually changed. This week, it was after they passed their universal background check bill. The Republicans issued a motion to recommit, which would add language to the resolution, forcing any gun shop owner who came across an illegal immigrant trying to buy a gun to report that to ICE, and it actually passed because 26 Democrats sided with the Republicans. Nancy Pelosi not happy about this. Free Beacon. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told moderate Democrats during a closed-door meeting on Thursday to stop siding with Republicans on procedural votes, saying they could become a lower priority for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in 2020. During Thursday's meeting, Pelosi warned Democrats who voted with Republicans on the latest motion to recommit, saying, "This is not a day at the beach. This is the Congress of the United States." Pelosi was later quoted as saying, "We are either a team or we're not, and we have to make that decision." She was backed up by new Democratic quote-unquote superstar Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who offered to put the word out that Democrats voting with the GOP on anything at all should be up for a primary challenge in 2020. So, Jim, big tent going on there in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean, look, basically the message here is Pelosi and Alexandria Ocasio to Purple State or Purple District Democrats. Stop being Purple District Democrats. Stop knowing what your district will accept and what it won't. Stop thinking of your own of your constituents. Stop thinking of your own self-preservation and what's likely to keep you around for a while. Do as we say. That's the message right there. Now, way back when I covered the House floor back on 98, 99 for Congressional Quarterly, and it's worth noting the motion to recommit used to have two purposes. The first was like the minority. What the Republicans have managed to do in these two cases is kind of usually they don't succeed. Usually they're purely of symbolic value. Some sort of legislation gets through the committee process, and it doesn't include some amendment or some idea that the minority would like to have on there. So the motion to recommit is go back and add this, and then it'll be a better bill, and then we'll vote to pass it. It's almost a, hey, you forgot to do this provision for getting legislation passed. And there can be a purpose for it if you're in the majority. It's easier if you have a bigger majority. That if you've got some folks in your district who know this is going to be a tough vote, who know this isn't going to play well in their district, the motion to recommit can be kind of a fig leaf. It can be kind of a little bit of cover to say, well, look, you can either vote against it or you can say, well, I voted for a motion to recommit because I wanted it to have this other thing in there that would make the bill for it. It gives them a little bit of cover for a bill that might not play well back in their district. And, this back when I was covering, this would happen, and not on every piece of legislation, but on pretty much every major one. And this would be where the minority party would make their stand, and also a certain sense where if you were one of those wavering folks in the majority party, where you wanted this thing to pass, but you knew it was going to be a tough one, you could, vote for the motion to recommit, and that was a little bit of cover there or something. But if you're going to do this, you need to know how your majority is going to vote. The answer here is that Pelosi and her crew can't count votes. Once it happens, okay, it's an accident. Twice, it starts to look like a habit, and they're basically putting out legislation that a chunk of their purple district Democrats can't vote for. So, the way how you avoid this, you check with them beforehand. You try not to put them in that position. Otherwise, the people who were part of that big wave aren't going to be around for very long. And yes, some of them are in your classic swing districts, but some of them are representing places like Oklahoma City and coastal South Carolina and places like that. Not easy districts that they managed to win in a fairly advantageous and maybe even unique set of circumstances. So all in all, if you're a Democrat, this is egg on your face. Right? You're supposed to know this kind of stuff. If you're Nancy Pelosi and her House whips and all that kind of stuff. So don't berate people for voting for their interests and voting their districts. Berate people for not letting you know ahead of time, and or berate your own people for not letting you know that you had your caucus was not unified behind these ideas. So really, Madam Speaker, there's not that many people to blame besides yourself.
Yeah, Steny Hoyer, the majority leader, is now publicly musing about changing the rules on motions to recommit because of these embarrassments. But hey,
that's the problem.
Yes, because it's been such a huge problem in the past. And hey, if you want to insist on all your swing district members to toe the AOC line, we'll take that going into 2020. I think that could help us out quite a bit. Let's move on to our bad/crazy martini now, Jim. And for that, we go to the Washington Examiner and David Drucker. Roy Moore, a conservative lightning rod who cost the Republican Party a Senate seat in deep red Alabama, is signaling fresh interest in mounting another campaign in 2020, sparking alarm on the right that Democratic Senator Doug Jones could be gifted another unlikely victory. Moore, 72, a former state judge, made the rounds at last Friday's Alabama Republican Party dinner gala. A few days later, a new political action committee run by Moore's son Caleb issued an email fundraising appeal. Republican insiders, including conservative allies of President Trump, fret that Moore, who was derailed by sexual assault allegations in a 2017 special election that should have been an easy layup, might divide the party in the primary and advance to a rematch with Jones. On Wednesday, a Moore confidant pointedly declined to rule out that his buddy might run for Senate next year. That's a good question, said Dean Young, Moore's close friend and advisor for the past 2 decades. I'm not at liberty to say anything about that right now. If Moore runs, the National Republican Senatorial Committee, the Senate GOP campaign arm, would take action to block him from the nomination. Otherwise, they plan to stay out of the primary. There's already what a lot of folks are calling a moderate member of Congress in this race, Bradley Byrne. Mo Brooks, who ran in the special election but lost in the first round of the primary in 2017, is also thinking about it. So, Jim, how hard do you want to slam your forehead into your desk when you hear that Roy Moore could get into this race next year for a seat that we've almost already chalked up in the red column for 2020?
Greg, I very rarely doubt that Roy Moore is listening to us. Probably even less likely that he's listening on an Alexa device. But just in case he is, I'm going to try to put it in as non-antagonistic a way as possible. Here in Virginia, Corey Stewart stopped running. Okay, this was our perennial. Some would say extremist. Some would say politically challenged figure who had a propensity for controversy. He probably, in a cause near and dear to Moore's heart, touting up the Confederacy and those Confederate statues and how dare anybody take them down. Corey Stewart was a absolute walking disaster area going up against Tim Kaine, who is our senator, and I must remind people was Hillary Clinton's running mate because it's easy to forget that. That's how unmemorable Tim Kaine is. And the year before that, he challenged Gillespie, nearly beat Gillespie in the gubernatorial primary. Corey Stewart's run for a bunch of races, and each year it's like, no, we're going to show people. We're going to surprise people. Here's the metaphor for both Corey Stewart and Roy Moore, Greg. I'm going to have to. People are going to forgive me. This is definitely a New York, New Jersey thing, and this is definitely a Generation X thing. This is kind of like Rich Kotite, the former head coach of the New York Jets, who had the Jets had fired Pete Carroll, who you may recall went on to win championships at the University of Southern California and with the Seattle Seahawks. After 1 year, the Jets let Pete Carroll go because they'd ended the season with a 5-game losing streak. It was indisputably disappointing. They hired Rich Kotite, who had just been fired as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles after he'd had a 7-game losing streak to end the season. And by this point, Rich Kotite had kind of gotten a reputation as a guy who'd had at that point, kind of mixed record, but starting to get out of touch with players, kind of this hapless reputation. Jets go out, first year of Rich Kotite, they go 3-13. It is a bad, bad team. The one thing the team has going for them is that they've got a good tight end named Johnny Mitchell. Naturally, with, I want to say, I'm going to say like the 7th or 8th pick, somewhere a fairly high pick in the next round draft, the New York Jets select a tight end, Kyle Brady. It's the one position on the team they already had somebody. And everybody's like, what are you doing? And then Rich Kotite said, look, we know what we're doing. Just you wait and see. We're going to do a double tight end offense. Nobody had done a double tight end offense in the NFL at that era for years and years. We're going to do this. Just you wait and see. We're going to prove the doubters all wrong. Rich Kotite went out and went 1-15 the following season. Finally getting an uncertain. So accumulating a 4 wins over a 2-year span. Really, really bad. It just got the parallel here is that when you keep insisting to the world, don't you worry, I'm going to show you this is going to work. And it doesn't. It's time for some self-reflection. If you're Roy Moore and you manage to lose a statewide race as a Republican in Alabama, you really need to go and look and say, okay, what did I do wrong? Not just with your whole life and perhaps your dating habits way back when. I was convinced this was going to win. I'm the most favorable state in the union for my party, or certainly one of the top, couple. And you lost to Doug Jones. And no one's referred to Doug Jones as a whirling dervish of raw political charisma here, right? Time to go back to the drawing board. Oh, by the way, one last thought here, Greg. Didn't he raise a ton of money for a recount?
Yes.
Whatever happened to that money?
I don't know how much he raised, but he did. Yeah, he was planning to do a recount that never happened.
There was no recount because it wasn't all that close in the end. I mean, close by Alabama standards, but it was not the sort of one where you thought, a couple of votes here, a couple of votes there was going to do it. Look, you managed to lose the race that no other Republican would lose. You should not run again. And I just get tired of these guys who are, this is the sort of circumstance where Jim Gilmore's 2016 presidential campaign looks realistic and self-aware.
Do you have a preference there? Do you know much about Byrne? Do you want Mo Brooks? Do you want Big Luther back? Or is it just anybody but Roy?
Honest to goodness, the entire process left such a bad taste in my mouth. I might like to, if we have any young, up-and-coming, rising star, principled, scandal-free options down there, that sounds pretty apt. Might be time for some new blood is what I'm saying there, Greg.
Wow, what a week from start to finish. Jim, we'll see you on Monday. Have a good one.
See you Monday, Greg.
Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Have a terrific weekend, everyone, and please join us again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.